Hey guys, welcome to UFC Betting Edge, and today we'll be breaking down the fights on the main card of Curtis Blaydes versus Derrick Lewis. And this is going to be an exciting card. However, one of the fights on the main card that I did analyze fell through. So this is one between Zhalgas Zhumagulov versus Amir Albazi. Now this was one of the fights that I was really looking forward to, but sadly, it's not going to be on this card. Hopefully they can reschedule it. Albazi is a submission artist, and Zhumagulov is a complete fighter coming out of Kazakhstan, who I think was robbed in his previous fight. Anyways, coming back to this card, it's got some interesting fights, and I think even though Curtis Blaydes after this win should be close to title contention, but there's still Francis Ngannou, who has 2 wins over Curtis. He's waiting for his title shot against Stipe. So heavyweight division is a little bit of a mess right now, but we'll see what happens with that. There is another heavyweight clash on the main card between Josh Parisian and Parker Porter. And I'm excited about the co-main event where Anthony Smith is coming back to fight Devin Clark. Anyway, so without further ado, let's hop onto the first fight on the main card between Bill Algeo and Spike Carlyle. Now, Bill Algeo made his UFC debut on 1 week's notice. He's a very tall guy for featherweight at 6 feet. And he also lost his Contender Series fight against Brendan Loughlane. So he's coming off a little shaky start. He's a pressure fighter who throws a lot of volume. He backs the opponent to hurt them and then take them to the ground. He throws good jabs, but he really lacks that firepower. His most effective strike is his step-in knee, and that can knock Carlyle out if he's trying to come in. In case Algeo times that knee, it'd be a quick night for Carlyle. Algeo concedes takedowns fairly easily, but he has good scrambling ability. He has to be really careful against Carlyle, who's a brilliant wrestler, to not concede takedowns and let the fight slip away. Bill Algeo is prone to taking leg kicks, and he took a bunch of them in his fight against Lamas in his Contender Series fight. So Spike Carlyle can capitalize on that when he's trying to maintain his distance. Algeo tries to secure headlock takedowns, and that can be really dangerous for someone as explosive as Carlyle, who can take their back and sink the choke in. So he has to be careful around that. Now, coming to Carlyle, he just had his second loss of his career against Billy Quarantillo, and that would have stirred some thinking about his fighting style. And we got to assess based on his previous fights how is he going to be in this fight. He definitely would have made some changes, even though I think he probably edged Billy Quarantillo in this fight. I bet on Quarantillo, and he's a super explosive guy, and he can generate a lot of power with his strikes and his takedowns. The downside of such a style is that he's prone to gassing. A lot depends on how Carlyle manages his energy and his cardio, and I think that will have a significant role to play in this fight. I think Carlyle's strategy will be to hurt Algeo standing and then go for a huge takedown and land brutal ground and pound. I think he can take Algeo down at will, especially early on, but he has to be really careful about not getting caught in a guillotine. Now, to summarize this, Carlyle is an explosive wrestler who has a lot of power in his hands and his kicks. He looks to swarm his opponents with shots on feet and on the ground to finish them early. He'd have to be really careful to not blow his steam trying to get a quick finish, as Algeo is a tough fighter and If he can't get a finish, it could be problematic for Carlyle. Algier showed against Lamas that he is legit and poses a lot of threat with his knees up the middle and his overall pressure. Algier tends to fade a bit in the third round, and even if the fight goes there, Carlyle might be able to squeak past him via a close decision. So my prediction, Carlyle by an early finish or a long drawn-out decision. So the next fight on the cards is between Miguel Baeza and Takashi Sato. Now, Baeza is a tall orthodox fighter who's got an enviable frame for welterweight, coming in at 6'2" with 75-inch reach. His striking is very technical, and he throws fast kicks, roundhouse, side kicks, and front kicks. There isn't a lot of telegraphing in his technique, especially his front leg high kick and a front body kick. He knocked out Hector Aldana after a series of calf kicks, though Sato, being a southpaw, will ensure that Baeza won't be using it as much. Baeza has devastating knees, as well as southpaw. Sato being a southpaw, this is expected to be a weapon of choice if he tries to change levels. Baeza is an opportunistic fighter, and he doesn't mind taking the fight to the ground using body lock or double leg takedown. Baeza also has a hell of a chin, and he can take solid shots without a problem. Even when he was almost finished by Matt Brown in his last fight, he kept his wits about himself and came back to finish Matt Brown. That is a key sign of a seasoned fighter, even though he's only 9-0 in his pro career. Now, Takashi Sato is coming off of a quick under 1 minute win over short notice replacement Jason Witt. And prior to that, he suffered a third round submission loss to Bilal Muhammad. Sato is primarily a southpaw striker who has a movement-based point fighting attack. He bounces on his both legs just like Gunnar Nelson or Lyoto Machida did, and he hops in with fast 1-2. His most effective punch is his straight left that comes after the jab, and he uses his jab to measure the distance or split the guard, and then fires this left hand, which is truly lethal. Sato is prone to getting hit from left hook from orthodox fighters. It happened against Bilal Muhammad and a bunch of times, and he got dropped once too. Sato has some nice judo throws in his arsenal that you might see when his opponents are trying to take him down. He also has nice body lock takedowns that might come handy against the lean frame of Baeza. To summarize this fight, Takashi Sato is the more experienced fighter, and he boasts an impressive record of 16-3. Baeza has almost half the fights as Sato has, and has never faced defeat. Technique-wise, Baeza has a much broader arsenal of strikes, where he throws a lot of kicks, punches, whereas Sato is more basic, but he has a really sharp, quick 1-2, and that's his primary line of attack. He could have improved since we saw him last, and if Sato had the same skills, but was an orthodox stance fighter, I would have favored Baeza much more than I am now. I think Baeza will mix takedowns with his strikes and will get better as the fight goes on, as he starts to figure the karate stance of Sato. I see him winning by a decision or finish late in the third round. So the next fight is in the heavyweight division, where two newcomers are colliding in Josh Parisian and Parker Porter. Now, as far as skill levels is concerned, this fight should not be on the main card. But I guess people or casual fans like to see big knockouts, and that's why the fight is here. So let's dive into it. Josh Parisian won the UFC contract in his second outing at the Contender Series, where he stopped a much lighter fighter in Chad Johnson via ground and pound after hurting him on the feet. It's always hard to predict newcomers' fight, especially at the heavyweight division, where it's A punch can do the trick, and it's hard to judge the skills based on the opponent's skills. Josh Parisian is agile for his weight and will have a huge height and reach advantage in this fight. He also has decent cardio for a man his size. He throws a lot of flashy techniques that look fairly amateurish, but he's knocked out his opponents with it, so I can't complain with that. He also has really good leg kicks that are extremely powerful. His takedown defense is a little suspect, where he was taken down by a much lighter man, but he was able to scramble back up really quickly and knock out that opponent right after. Now, talking about Porter is coming into his second fight in the UFC after losing his debut to Chris Daukaus via a first-round knockout. He has faced John Jones and UFC heavyweight Gabriel Gonzaga earlier in his career. He ended up losing both the fights, but he has that under his belt. Parker is 6 feet tall and cuts down to 265, so you can imagine how low his center of gravity is. He's a super stout man, and he's got a pretty decent cardio. In one of the tapes that I saw on him, he knocked out his opponent in the third round when he looked fairly gassed. So what it means is he still carries power when he's tired. He has fast hands for a man his size, and he throws mean low leg kicks. With both fighters being orthodox, I believe Porter's leg kicks will be crucial in the fight, as will be Parisian's. Although Porter prefers striking, it will be advisable for him to utilize takedowns and make Josh carry his massive compact frame, because if it just keeps on the feet, Parisian might have the edge, especially because he has a longer reach and he's 4 inches taller. Now, to summarize this fight, it's always hard to call fighters that are unproven in the big league, especially in the heavyweight division. Parisian is the younger guy coming in with momentum, having won last 6. Porter, on the other hand, is 4-2 in his last 6. However, there's more than what meets the eye here. If you look at the records of his opponents, Parisian's opponents have a record of 28 wins and 33 losses, so they have a losing record. Whereas Porter's opponents have 55 wins and 46 losses. Not that great, but they've been more experienced and they have a better record, a winning record, which kind of takes away from the momentum angle that we're talking about, and that's why I probably have put the bets much closer than what Bet365 has it. If the fight stays standing, I definitely favor Parisian based on his long strikes and movement. However, if Porter utilizes kicks and gets his takedowns, he might ruin the plans of UFC to provide an impressive debut for their Contender Series alum. I won't be betting on this fight, but I think Parisian is going to take this, as takedown opportunities can only materialize in the middle of the cage, and I don't see either one of them getting it on each other. On the feet, Parisian will probably find the kill shot, so Parisian by KO. Now, if we look at the odds, Bet365 has Parisian coming in at -200, which is like 66% probability. Now, this is way too high considering, the record, opponents' records that I told you. Plus, there's so much unproven, and Parker Porter has fought better competition, I feel. And even though he's coming off of a loss and he's older, I think you can't give much. You can't give him odds of plus 170. I won't bet, but if you put a gun to my head, I'll say Josh Parisian by KO. So next, the co-main event. I'm kind of looking forward to this fight. I'm rooting for Anthony Smith, but I have tried my best not to let my bias be a part of this fight. Maybe I failed. We'll see. So Anthony Smith's stock took a huge hit after his Glover Teixeira loss. He was handily beating Glover for 1.5 rounds, and then ended up getting knocked out in the fourth, where he took hell of a beating. He was then dominated on the ground for 15 minutes by Alexander Rakic in his last fight. In his fight with Devin Clark, Smith will have a huge advantage standing up, and he'd like to keep the fight there. Smith will look to land knees up the middle, time Clark's takedown shots, but that's easier said than done considering how quick Clark changes levels. Smith has decent takedown defense, and if Clark is trying to get the takedown next to the cage, Smith will probably use the Travis Brown elbows to land on Clark's head and try to finish the fight there, and even deterring him to do that further in the fight. Even if Smith gets taken down, he has decent jiu-jitsu skills, and he might work on reversing or getting back up to his feet. Now, talking about Devin Clark, he's coming off a hard-fought victory against Alonzo Menifield, where he was able to withstand a barrage early on, but extended the previously undefeated fighter to the third round to win the fight. Even though I think exhaustion played the biggest role in Menifield's defeat that night. Clark has good double leg shot, and he changes his level really fast. He can definitely take Smith down if he isn't especially careful about it. One of the most important points that I noticed about Clark is that he does not take punches well. He flinches, he turtles up, and he starts running away when it gets hit. And Smith is the kind of fighter who picks up on these kind of things. Now, this is a grappler versus a fairly all-round fighter fight, and Clark's path to victory is fairly clear. Landing a lucky shot or taking the fight to the ground and controlling it on the ground, because I don't see Clark submitting Smith. Smith, on the other hand, has variety of tools in his toolbox, especially when standing up. This is a smaller cage that will help Clark in restricting Smith's movement. A part of this fight will happen in the clinch, where I think Smith will have a big advantage with his crisp elbows. I feel that this fight will look a lot like Anthony Smith versus Andrew Sanchez, where Clark might land a couple of takedowns here and there, but they won't be easy. They won't be easy for him. Smith will hurt Clark on the feet during this process and finish it via TKO. So if we look at the odds, I'm really surprised that the odds are so close, wherein Anthony Smith is coming in at minus 138. I'll easily give him a minus 200. So minus 138 is about 52%, 54% probability, where I give him around 66% chance. For me, though, Anthony Smith usually finishes his fights, and Devin Clark has lost most of his fights via finish. So I would say Anthony Smith at plus 160 gives you really good value. So for me, it's Smith by TKO or submission. Now the main event, Curtis Blaydes versus Derrick Lewis. So Blaydes is coming in this fight with high confidence after winning 4 in a row, and 2 of them by stoppage. He's looked really dominant in almost all his recent fights, and his striking has evolved a lot. He also mixes his takedowns with his striking much better, and that makes his wrestling and striking more effective. In this fight, his aim would be to take the fight to the ground and get Lewis tired and land his ground and pound. Blaydes deploys various kind of takedowns, double, single, and body lock. He lands about 7 takedowns per 15 minutes, and that's a lot of control time to tire his opponents only to let them back up to put them back down again. He chains his takedowns really well, and that would be a key to get Lewis down, because Lewis has a lot of strength as strong he is. So Curtis would need to chain takedowns to get him off balance, something like what DC did. He has to be really careful to set up his takedowns, as one mistake could lead him to getting knocked out. So Blaydes would like to set up his takedowns. Derrick Lewis, on the other hand, is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, but coming off of 3 consecutive wins. He looked good in his last fight against Olenek, where he knocked him out in the second round. He's an explosive heavyweight who has limited cardio, but he manages his energy fairly well to land his power shot. Lewis is really fast for his size and carries power late in the fight, even when he looks really tired. So this is something that Blaydes needs to be extremely careful about. Lewis is hard to take down and keep grounded, except for his fight against DC and to some extent against Latifi. He scrambled back up to his feet, but with pure power and less of technique. Now Lewis has to be really careful not to exhaust himself, and Blaydes is known to use this game plan against his opponents to tire them and then TKO them. This fight is where the audience come to watch the underdog knock out the powerful favorite. This is going to be an uphill task for Lewis, considering how their styles match up. The only man to beat Blaydes is Ngannou, and Lewis, even though is pretty fast and powerful, lacks Ngannou's speed and that one-punch knockout. And I think this will be the difference in this fight. Lewis can catch Blaydes and put him to sleep, but I don't see that happening. I see Blaydes taking Lewis down, letting him up, only to drag him down again. Pretty much what DC did against Lewis. Difference being that Blaydes is more likely to TKO Lewis than submit. So that's my prediction. Blaydes by TKO. Now we look at the odds. At bet 365, Curtis Blaydes is coming as minus 400, which is like 80% probability winning. I put him at around 75 at minus 300. But I think there's still value to be had in a Blaydes knockout. 5 rounds is a long time. Blaydes has a style that exhausts his opponents. Lewis is known to get tired and get hit on the body. So I think a combination of all these factors, I think it's a pretty safe bet. Because I don't see a lot of value in Curtis straight, and there's definitely some value in Curtis winning by TKO. Thanks guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button, share and subscribe. Leave your comments, and I would love to chat with you about who you think are going to win and why. I would also love to discuss some of the betting strategies that you might have. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and I will see you next Thursday. Bye-bye for now.